Welcome to lesson 4 in how to use the GEMulator to do solo role-playing. Now, in the previous 3 lessons, we first looked at the overview for how the GEMulator sees a role-playing game happening. That is, it is a campaign which is composed of alternating adventures and downtime and random event periods that they call the campaign turn. So adventure, campaign turn, until we finish the campaign. So then we have been going through this process of creating this campaign. So we started then with lesson number 2, how do we create the large scale campaign? And we created a campaign where the premise is there's going to be a gargantuan creature hunt, a naval creature hunt. So we're thinking something like we're hunting a sea creature. This is going to be somebody's life story. So we're really starting very, very far away from that hunt happening, how they get to the point where that's something they're going to do. Then we know the scope is universal, which means we're going to have global factions that are interested in what's happening throughout this campaign. We know that the stakes are minimal. That is, it's not a big deal if things don't actually work out. It's not going to be that this creature then consumes the universe. Rather, it just didn't get hunted. The theme, it turned out, was romance, so we decided this meant that if we slay this monster, it's going to win the princess's hand for whatever the kingdom is that wants this monster slain. Then we designed our first adventure in lesson number 3, where we decided the first adventure, we rolled this up on tables, found out we were supposed to negotiate as third-party peace negotiators related to war. We found out that the quest giver was a prison in some fashion, and also that the reason was to potentially regenerate art. We took this to mean that what we really want to do is negotiate for the freedom of an artist. The artist, sculptor, Arzu, who has been captured by the rival kingdom of Akil. So we have Denenje, the home of Arzu, really wants his release. The kingdom of Akil is holding him for some reason that is not yet clear to us, and that's okay. So our main character, which we decided is named Japik, is going to come and act as a third-party negotiator. We decided Japik is probably a minor noble. Japik, I don't know how I'm going to pronounce this. It'll probably switch each time I say it. Is a minor noble in some neighboring kingdom. We decided to call the name of his kingdom the Kingdom of Farid. So actually, I'm going to add them right now to the active factions list. So the Kingdom of Farid. Or Farid. Farid. Let's do it Farid. Okay. Right, so we have these 4 active factions. The Kingdom of Zedananje and Akil are fighting over Arzu. We have Farid, who is providing the negotiator. We also found out that there is a group of renegades that is in some way interested in this negotiation, whether or not it's going to happen. In terms of active locations, we know that we are going to be in the capital city of Akil. That is, after all, where it is likely Arzu is going to be being held. Our active goals would be to negotiate for release. All right, so this is our context that we need to then enter a scene. So what happens when you start a scene? Well, this is all provided for us. If you look in the PDF of the GEMulator, again, the GEMulator is for free, available to you on drivethroughrpg.com. Suggested price of 0. Certainly feel free to give Solo Tabletop Blog some money. I don't get anything if you do, but certainly it's a great way to reward creating what is really, I think, a fantastic resource for those of us that like having a little bit of structure for us for our solo role-playing games. So he has here what he describes as the core gameplay loop, where we have to define the scene, figure out whether there's a scene transition that happens, and then play out that scene and check the goal at the end. So every scene is going to be defined by 3 major traits. That is the location, the goal, and how we're going to try to start. Let's go ahead and do that for scene 1. So I'm imagining now that our character Japik is just entering the capital city of Akil. I'm going to say the capital city of Akil is actually called Akil, so it's one of those cases where the kingdom is named after the capital city. Right? So it's the capital city, Akil. We are entering into Akil, and what is the first thing we need to do to try to secure the release of Arzu? I'm imagining here we're going to have 3 scenes playing out. The first scene is going to be where we're going to try to secure some. We need to secure an audience, right, with whoever it is that is going to make the decision. Most likely, I'm going to say it makes sense for this to be the king of Akil. So let's go ahead and write that down first as our goal. So we're going to try to secure an audience. with the king of Akil. If I wanted a name, I could come up with one. Actually, I do want a name. Let's go ahead and roll. So random name generator. Again, this is from behindthename.com/random. It's the same one that I used in the previous video. Random names are so Arnbjorg, Ola, Ferdos. Yeah, let's go with Arnbjorg. Arnbjorg. So that is my goal, to secure an audience with the King of Akil, Arnbjorg. How is this going to start? Well, first location. I assume we're going to be outside the palace. So we're going to be interacting with guards. And how is this going to start? It's going to start with Jackal, or no, it's not Jackal, it's Japik. So Japik is going to be approaching guards to secure an audience. The next thing we need to do is roll for a scene transition. So this transition table, what we need to do first is we're going to roll a D100. So I got a 3. Then we need to add in any relevant modifiers. So the relevant modifiers typically for this particular roll are going to come from 2 places. One is your campaign length. So in our case, our campaign length as a life story, and we're just starting out, that gives us a minus 100 on this roll. So we're actually down to negative 97. The second major modifier you're going to find is typically from what happened in the previous scene. Since there is no previous scene, we don't have any modifier from that. Right, so that tells us the scene transition would be whatever would follow with negative 97. Now, in this case, I don't know that we really have good guidance as to what to do if we end up with a negative number, honestly. That's not something that I found here in the system. It might just be that I missed it, honestly. So I'm going to just say that negative 97 is equivalent to rolling the lowest possible. So we are basically equivalent to rolling the 1. It's rolling the 1 for a scene transition. That means we have a positive replacement. Then I'm going to roll for the focus. Now, I think it makes the most sense, though I don't think the rules explicitly say this. I I don't think the scene transition modifier should apply to the focus. So 60 is just what we're going to work with, so it says new character. So we have some kind of positive replacement, a new character coming in. So positive replacement means that there's something about this scene that is going to be replaced. Perhaps the scene itself that I was planning gets entirely replaced with the introduction of a new character instead. Let's go with that. So instead of this happening outside the palace, where we're trying to secure an audience with the King of Akil, this is something totally different is happening. So, and this is going to be our benefit. It is a positive replacement. So we get to replace this scene with something else. So it's a positive replacement. So I'm going to write down the transition. Positive replacement. This is why I would not recommend writing in pen when you're setting up these scenes, because odds are something's going to change. So we have the introduction of a new character. I don't know much about who this new character is going to be, but it's going to be something beneficial to us. So in order to figure out who this character is, I'm going to go back to the quest giver list. So the quest giver list is on page 26, and there is right here an NPC list. So I'm just going to go ahead and roll a D100 on that and see what comes up and see if I can make any sense of that. So this new NPC that is going to be helpful to us is a distant relative. Oh, that's actually potentially quite helpful, right? So a distant relative shows up. So new character, distant relative. Let's give this distant relative a name. So again, back to the random name generator. Distant relative, they're named Ola. I'm going to say this is a cousin. So we have our cousin Ola shows up. Where does this happen? I'm going to say it's shortly after we enter the city. Right. So we're not outside the palace. Actually, we are in. See, we're in an inn. Right, so we're in fact in the tavern attached to this inn. So our goal is to secure an audience still with the King of Akil. Nothing about that got replaced. We just have a new character coming in. All right, so my original plan was to approach guards to secure an audience. Instead, what's happening is that Ola finds, apparently has gotten news that Japik is going to be there and offers to secure this audience with the king. Right. Now, the way that we would want to play this out is we would actually use our RPG system to play out a scene and see what happens. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to skip to the end. Let's say that this actually succeeds, right? So we get together. All she's very well disposed toward me, so everything works out great. So in this case, the outcome is going to be a positive outcome. That is, the goal is achieved. In case the goal is achieved, we go back to this is the last page of the PDF, so page 44. It has a table right here. Oh, right above that table. Check your scene goal. Goal achieved -15 to scene transition. So I'm going to put a -15 to scene transition for the next one. Right, so next scene. So we've already secured an audience. So the next thing we need to do then is have the audience with the king. That is a sensible scene that is going to happen. Right, so the next location is going to be in the palace of Akil. Right, the goal here is going to be to secure the release of Arzu, the artist. Our start, I'm going to say that we are actually entering, and in all likelihood, the king is there, right? So we're going to, we're actually going to start, in some sense, in media res, and we're already there, right, in the king's court, right, where we are making the case. So we're starting with Japik making the case for the release of Arzu to the kingdom of, what is it, Dananjay. So that's what we're planning. And then we need to roll for that scene transition. So again, roll a d100. In this case, first we have to apply the -100 modifier, so we're down to -54, and then we apply the other -15 from the previous scene. So that'd make it -69 in this case. All right, so a -69 certainly is going to be enough to give us some kind of positive replacement. So what is it that's being replaced this time? So roll a d100. Now remember, this is to our favor that some again character is being replaced. Oh, that's interesting. So in this case, I'm not sure which character is going to be replaced and exactly what that means. At this point, you can see I have two characters in my list. I'm actually going to add in another character or two. After all, Ola is probably going to be there and present. Also, naturally, we need to add the king. So see here, we need to kind of update the list. Anytime it says Arnbjorg or Arnbjorg, is it Arnbjorg? That's it. Arnbjorg. So we need to update the list as necessary. So now it's going to be somewhere in these four characters, there's going to be some kind of replacement. So I'm going to have it roll a d4 to figure out which of these characters is going to be replaced. One. So in some way, Japik, our player character, is going to be replaced. Huh. So how is that possibly going to be for benefit? What I'm thinking is that there's a noble person that, as soon as they hear what's happening, immediately takes up the case. So Japik just starts talking, and that is enough for one of the prominent members of the court to step forward and to make the case for Japik. And so apparently he is, and this is, I mean, so this is a replacement of what he was planning to do with somebody else doing that same thing for him. This is, I think, a pretty great thing to have happen. So we have a positive replacement again. So positive replacement. We have another noble makes the case for Japik. Is this going to succeed? I don't know or not. So I'm going to go ahead and use one of the general oracles. So there are a number of oracles available here. So there's the approach, intent, and theme, which we used when we set up this adventure. There's also a disposition. A disposition gives us some sense of, kind of how does a particular character feel about us. We have distance, morale, experience, reputation. If we want to add some kind of twist there. Also focus, anytime we need to decide what the focus of something is. But I'm going to use the general oracle here. It's just a yes, no question. So the question that I'm asking Now that since it's Japix hands, I have a couple options. Right, one would be if I am using right some kind of RPG system, I could stat out this other noble and roll for their whatever their persuasion ability is. I'm not going to do that. Instead, what I'm going to do is just say, what is the likelihood that they are actually going to be convincing? For that, I'm going to do two things. So first, I'm going to roll about one, what is this person's reputation? Right, so I'm going to roll a d10 on the reputation. It says reputation unknown. So apparently, so this is a significant noble. It's somebody that is here in the court, but apparently it's somebody that the king doesn't know particularly well. Right, so that's going to be something that is going to play into the likelihood that they are going to actually be successful in convincing the king to actually buy into what's happening here. Then I also want to look at the disposition. And here, disposition, I want to know how does the king feel about this person, though they don't know them very well. Nonetheless, they have a first impression. So I know what that first impression is like. It says it's a 3, they're supportive. All right, so the king is generally supportive of this person. Apparently, the person is fairly convincing, seems genuine, or perhaps seems useful. Right, so given this information, I'm going to say it's likely that the king is convinced. So I'm going to roll, it's a d100 again. So roll the d100 on this table, and I look at the likely row. So I follow the likely row across. I rolled a 52. Rolled across 52, so I got a yes. So yes, the king is convinced. So the outcome here is the king is convinced, and as a result, Arzu is set free to the kingdom of Dananjay. And that's it. Right, so at this point, we would say, well, it looks like we have completed everything. So we finished our adventure because we accomplished the goal of the adventure. Right, so in this case, it was a fairly short one. Just 2 scenes was enough to work it out, and that's perfectly fine. Sometimes that happens. You have short adventures. In this case, everything was going really well. Right, so in order to finish things up, what I would need to do then is go back to the original adventure, uh, the adventure entry in the campaign log. I mentioned the location. In this case, I hadn't put it in before. It's the Kingdom of Akil. The summary of what happened here is that Japik secured the release of Arzu, the sculptor, to the Kingdom of Dananjay with the not jelp, of another noble. Okay. Outcome was success. So that's it. Then the last thing we need to do, because this is a life story, I would need to roll a d100 to figure out what happens to my scene transition modifier. So I'm going to go ahead and roll that d100 now. There, it goes up by 41, so that means next time it's going to be a negative 59 is what I'm going to be applying when we do the scene transitions. And that then is going to change, right, the types of things that are going to happen. So rather than seeing positive replacement all the time, we'll perhaps see some different outcomes potentially. So that shows you how you can play out an adventure going scene to scene, how you can apply the modifiers. The next step then would be to go, now that the adventure is over, we need to go into the campaign turn. We're going to have some downtime into random events. But that's a matter for the next lesson.